Welcome to Daddy Issues, a podcast by Fathers and Family Center of Indianapolis, Indiana. This is our inaugural episode, sort of a preview, a teaser, if you will. I'm Jason Acquisto. I'll be hosting this podcast along with my friend, Larry Smith. Larry is the president and CEO of Fathers and Family Center. Hello, Larry. How you doing?
I'm great, Jason. How are you doing?
Great. I'm so excited we're going to do this podcast. This is something that we've been talking about for a long time, but really the vision comes down to you and the organization itself. And so as we launch this Daddy Issues, what do you want this podcast to be about?
Great question. You know, as you and I have discussed it, you know, we're two just regular guys, two dads, and we are just trying to figure out life in general, but certainly life as a father. And, you know, for me, there's a kind of a wide spectrum here. On the one hand, you know, we'll talk about some fun and lighthearted stuff, kind of the foibles of being a dad. On the other hand, you know, there's some serious issues going on. You know, being a parent is the most rewarding and also the toughest job that, you know, certainly I've ever done. And so at the end of the day, hopefully we can provide some levity, but also some insight and hopefully some help to fathers who just want to get a perspective on what it means to be a dad.
Yeah, it's the greatest job ever, but it's also the hardest job ever. And
Oh, yeah.
you know, I mean, I always wanted this job and it's the best I ever had. And, you know, I'll never quit this job. You know, it's all those things. So real quick, let's set the table. So I've got one son and he is 19 and he is a freshman in college. So what's your situation?
So I have three kids and a fourth as a bonus. So I was a teenage dad. And so I became a dad right before I turned 17. My oldest is now 34 and is a mom and married, has given me two grandchildren. Very, very excited about them as well. And then her husband, of course, my son-in-law. That's what I meant by a bonus child. And then also a 17-year-old daughter who's a senior in high school. And then her brother who is 15 years old and a sophomore in high school.
So you've got several different situations going on. Fatherhood is so many different things to different people, and the choices we make or the way we come to be a father. And also not just were you a teenager, but that was a different time. That was the 20th century. So that was right? Way different. A lot of the things in the world were different. So all these things come to bear on being a father. And you're a grandfather too. Do you want me to call you Poppy or something? I don't know. What do your grandkids call you?
You know, excuse me. It's so funny that you asked that question. Also, I need to make a correction. My daughter's now 35, not 34. It's hard to keep that track. They're just kind of doing a math in my head. But I have them call me G-Paw. I am insistent that there's no grand in my title. And so it's funny. Last night, I was watching the grandkids along with my two older ones. And so my son asked, two younger ones rather. And so my son asked me, well, what does the G stand for? And it took me a minute. And I said, great, right? It's great. It's not grand, Paul. It's great, Paul. He just kind of rolled his eyes.
So, but you're making this up as you go along. I mean, you know, that's the beauty of it is that there's no wrong answer there, but that was a pretty excellent answer, you know. So,
you know, you mentioned earlier this being a job that you would never quit. I'm sure though there are times that my kids want to fire me. I'm not going to quit.
Yeah, or at least put you on probation, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
they'll write me up a couple of times.
So here we are in the year 2022, and we've got the world the way it is, and you know, bringing up a kid, being a role model, being a parent, being responsible, being conscientious when it comes to being a dad. What is in your gut and what is your passion right now that you'd like to express in our conversations on this podcast?
You know, back to it being the most rewarding and also the toughest job. One thing that I frequently think about is how different it is. I mean, you mentioned it, you know, being the 21st century, and you know, I'm 52, and you know, mentally, emotionally, I feel more like 72. Now, physically, probably more like 32. But my outlook, I work out all the time and all that. But my outlook is certainly shaped very much by. My parents obviously were boomers. My dad was not involved in my life, but I have more of that sort of boomer outlook, and so it's difficult for me to adjust to a lot of the thought processes, some of the behaviors, and so on of teenagers, my teenagers in particular. And so it's a, for lack of a better phrase, it is a negotiation. I know that a lot of times if I'm trying to really just impose my will and to say, well, why are we doing this way? Because I said so. Now, ultimately, they will acquiesce, but I have found over time that's not the most effective way to parent. And so, over time, there's my older daughter will tell you that I am a different parent from when she was a little girl.
I would hope so.
Yes, very, very, very different. It was more sort of command and control when she was little, whereas with these two teens, it is in some ways more of a negotiation.
Something I think about a lot because having a son that has a lot of the same interests as I do, to me, it's not ideal to try to be friends with your child, and that was always something I saw in other people. Sometimes I'd say, "Oh, I'm never going to be that way. I'm going to be the parent, the father," but still, it's kind of hard to resist that. How do you feel about being best friends with your kids? Is that a hard thing to avoid?
Yeah, it is. A few years ago, my son again is 15, probably 4 years ago, so he was around 11. We were having some kind of a discussion, not really heated. I mean, he's very obedient and all that, but we were having a discussion, and I made the comment that I am not your friend, I am your father. Had I known what the ramifications of that statement were going to be, I would have said it differently. Now,
yeah,
because it's something that really deeply affected him, and he'll bring it up from time to time. Well, you remember you said you're not my friend. You're my father, and I didn't mean it in the way that he received it, or at least the way that I perceived that he received it. But it's tough. I meant simply to say, hey, we're, and another phrase that I've used is that we're not peers. I mean, same thing that you said. But as they get older, the nature of the relationship changes, and again, they're not quite, the two younger ones are not quite to adulthood yet, but it's tough. I mean, because you certainly want to be friendly with them. Above all, you want them to know that you love them and would do anything for them. I tell them all the time, I'd give my life for you. But kids don't necessarily require that, right? They just want to have a good time with their dad, and so anyway, I just I wish I had, I think the golf term is mulligan, right? I wish I had a do-over with that one.
So I understand exactly what you meant by that, and we know what we mean to say, and we think it came out that way, and it hit wrong, or it hit inaccurately there. So
Right.
What do you think you should have said, looking back, if you could do it again? What, if you don't mind me asking? And I mean, we should just go ahead and stop saying it, if you don't mind me asking, because this is going to be a personal conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's what the podcast is about. Time for a quick break. You're listening to Daddy Issues Podcast. We'll be right back.
Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
They say opposites attract. That's why the Sleep Number Smart Bed is the best bed for couples. You can each choose what's right for you, whenever you like. You like a bed that feels firm, but they want soft? Sleep Number does that. You want to sleep cooler, while they like to feel warm. Sleep Number does that too. Sleep Number Smart Beds also learn how you sleep and provide you with personalized insights to help you sleep even better. You have to feel it to believe it. Find the bed that's for both of you, only at a Sleep Number store. 9 out of 10 couples say they sleep better on a Sleep Number smart bed. Time to catch some Z's. JD Power ranks Sleep Number number 1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now during Sleep Number's biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed, plus special financing for a limited time. For JD Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com. See store for details.
Again, it's Daddy Issues, a podcast from Fathers and Families Center in Indianapolis. I'm Jason, and this is Larry Smith, the CEO and president of Fathers and Families. And I was asking, what should you have said looking back instead of "I'm not your friend, I'm your father"?
Yeah, I think what I should have said was something along the lines of, I am here to be your father. That involves being your protector, your provider. And, ultimately, as you become a man, our relationship will change. And again, that might sound pretty heavy for an 11-year-old, but, I have to, of course, everybody thinks their kids are geniuses. But, I think that kids in general, because of the time that they're growing up in, they've endured a pandemic, and if they're old enough, even going back to the Great Recession, all these crazy things have happened in the country and in the world, that he was emotionally mature enough to understand. If I had expressed it in a better way, I think that he would have understood that I was not saying that, you are just someone who I can disregard. Just do what I say. Your opinion doesn't matter, doesn't count. I think if I had said that in a different way, he would have received it better.
I mean, you were a parent at a young age, and so is it accurate to say you maybe were more serious than you could have been?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And, part of that, I think, was insecurity, right? I mean, I was young. We essentially grew up together. And so, and so I certainly felt at the time a need to really assert that I was the parent and you are the child. But I think that a lot of that was born of the fact that, obviously, because I was first-time parent, but also because I was so young. I think subconsciously I really felt the need to assert my authority.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's tough, and there's so much that happens in real time that you don't plan for. Obviously, we all remember being handed a little baby and we're like, okay, well, what do I do now? And there's no book or guide. I mean, there are things to help and people to help, but there's no right answer and there's no roadmap that someone went down exactly the same way. Thank God for my siblings that they're all older and I can get help with parenting from them, but, and friends, of course. But I mean, geez, it's not easy. This is not an easy job.
Absolutely. And, I had, of course, my mom was around at the time. My grandparents, unfortunately, they're all deceased now, along with my father. And, as I stated, so my father, so my parents were divorced when I was, very, very young, 4 or 5 maybe. And he was not involved in my life for the most part. So I didn't really have him to rely on. My grandfather was very helpful on my mom's side. And so, I think that it's a situation, you said, you had friends over time, of course, as my friends began to have children themselves. It was interesting that they began to look to me because I had been, doing it for a few years.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting kind of dynamic shift that happened over time.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the first kid to get a car. You're like, what's it like? Oh, or maybe not. That's
Just don't wreck it.
Yeah. Well, too late for that. I've wrecked a few times. So, this is going to be a conversation about lighthearted things, but also serious things. I mean, this is the world that we live in right now. But I mean, let's just pick out one thing. Like what's something that you feel like is a huge challenge that we need to react to and parent, in the midst of. Is it, I'm just going to jump in. Is it racism? Is it a political landscape? Is it a sense of social justice? Is it a sense of, what from your perspective is a big issue right now being a dad?
Yeah, great question and a hard question. I think it's all of the above, frankly. Also, though, I think that it begins with trying to establish a sound moral foundation for the kids. And I know, people will define that in different ways. I'm a pretty devout Christian, so I'm going to define it from that lens. And I know that there's not one flavor of Christian. I'm, certainly very, very aware of that. But yeah, so dealing with racism, that has kind of come to the fore since the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020. And I find that really odd because for me, I'm not sure why that was a tipping point. As a Black man who has been very aware of police brutality since I was young, it's just in some ways kind of a head scratcher. But yeah, that's something that's difficult. On the political realm, I'll just go ahead and say that I refer to myself as a radical centrist. But for me, this issue is so beyond partisan politics. It's really about, and this is going to sound, maybe hyperbolic or to some or hokey to others, but this is really about the preservation of democracy. And I don't think that you can have democracy in a real sense if you don't begin with a common set of facts. This is something I talk about all the time. I write a weekly column, as you know, for the Indianapolis Recorder, African-American newspaper. And I keep going back to this point. There are a lot of things I very much criticize the Democrats for, certainly many things I criticize Republicans for. But at the end of the day, as a father, it is my job to share my perspective with my kids. And as they get older, they'll form their own opinion. And I can absolutely guarantee you there are many things about which we do not agree, no matter how much I want them to have my view. But at the end of the day, we're just there to shepherd them. They're loaned by God to us, but they're going to be whoever they're going to be.
Right. And thank God for that, because who needs another one of us, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But seriously, that's something that I've thought about. And now as I see my son, he's 19, he has his own ideas. A lot of them are versions of what, like you said, what we pass on to them and then make it their own. But I completely agree with you. It's no surprise the way that you describe yourself. Same here. And because you have to start with a common set of facts. And this is not a political podcast, but let's start with that, because that is a difficulty I see in being a parent. And my heart goes out to anyone who has kids that are younger or more impressionable or more in need of guidance at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I'm a grandfather. So I think about, my grandson is almost 2.5. My granddaughter is almost 1.5 years. And, I wonder not only what kind of world in which especially my younger kids are going to grow up in, but then, my grandkids who are even younger than they are. And so I just try to figure out, my place in the world, how I can do what I can to help it become, from my perspective, a better place. That's going to involve it's a very, very diverse world, not only in country, not only racially, socioeconomically, politically, and we have to learn to figure out this democratic experiment. It's the longest standing democracy in history, and it's kind of fraying at the edges, and it's something that we need to really focus on and get it together.
So raising kids, no big deal. You got this environment that's volatile, or we've got to get a hold of it. And so when you try to parent, your kids and bring up a woman of color and in this world and a young man of color and in this world, that's got to be the biggest challenge I could imagine.
It is. And, it's a balance. On the one hand, I want them really to focus on being kids, on being students, and having an enjoyable childhood to the extent that we can make that happen. At the same time, I don't want to shield them from all adversity, and because I don't think that is wise. I mean, I don't know about you, but some of the kids I grew up with who were the most sheltered were, shall we say, not as well prepared for the realities of the world. And so it's a balance, certainly for all parents, but in particular for African-American parents. It's like, well, how much should we talk about racism and structural inequality? Now, because they are both, citizens of the world, and obviously along with my older daughter, and she and her husband have their hands full, raising two, younger ones, and so we don't engage in discussions as frequently as I would like. But I understand, she's got her own life. Whereas with the two younger ones, sometimes I guess when they're feeling pity, they bring issues to me and want to discuss something that is going on in the world, and just to kind of get my reaction. Or I will raise issues to them. I'm an NPR. I'm just a news junkie in particular. But in the morning, the afternoon, if I'm taking them to school, typically NPR will be on, and there'll be a topic that comes on, and I'll be like, well, are you guys discussing this in school? It's yeah. Dad, or no, Dad. So whereas other times there are issues that they really want to talk about, and they'll bring them to me.
Yeah. That obviously is after you've said their name 3-4 times and realized they had the AirPods in. And so, hey, ask you a question. Yeah. So
absolutely.
This is Daddy Issues Podcast. We'll be right back.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte clear liners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you could pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug? Ignored a leaky faucet? Pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. Thumbtack is the app that makes it easier to care for your home. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Download Thumbtack and start caring for your home the easier way.
Tell us a little bit quickly about what the mission is of the Fathers and Families Center in Indianapolis, and just what's happening there.
Appreciate that. So Fathers and Families Center is 29 years old. And so obviously we're gearing up at the end of this year for our 30th next year. I succeeded the founding president and CEO, Dr. Wallace McLaughlin. Initially, the center was focused on young men in their late teens to their late 20s. In fact, there used to be an age restriction, basically 25, 26, somewhere in there. Today, there is no age restriction. In fact, our average age is closer to about 35 or so now, although we're working diligently to ensure that we are addressing the wants, the needs, the desires, the concerns of younger men as well. But we help at least a plurality of them have not graduated from high school. So we help them with high school equivalency. A lot of them have had challenges with what I call the criminal law system. And so we help them with that. Some of them are behind on child support. So we help them with all of those kinds of things, administrative, legal, those kinds of things. In addition to that, we provide job training. And so, CDL, commercial driver's license, forklift training, all that. We're going to expand that to include things like coding and things of that nature. But we help them with job training, and then we connect them with employers. We have dozens of employers who we connect them with. But I would argue that most importantly, what we do is help with relationships. And so that is the relationship with their children and also the relationship with their children's mother, even if they're no longer intimately involved. And so we address what we call the 4 Ps: the person, the parent, the partner, and the provider.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I love that key piece of the relationships there, because all the nuts and bolts of moving in a positive direction, those are great, but really it's about the glue, the relationships. We all really want to be close to the people, and all we really want is for a parent to be there, and for the partner to be there. Co-parenting is being normalized and
Absolutely.
I'm all for it. Right. So
Not only that, but blended families are something like 40% of all families in America
Sure.
are blended families, and at some point in the not too distant future, that's probably going to be the majority of families. I'm a divorced dad, and I literally thank God that my former wife and I co-parent very, very effectively. We don't argue about pickup times, and they're supposed to be with me. I know a lot of couples for whom that is not true, and I'm just very, very grateful that in my case, that we
that's a
co-parent
gift.
very, very well.
That's really a gift. That makes it easier. So again, this is Daddy Issues, a podcast by Fathers and Families Center in Indianapolis. I'm Jason, and I'm talking with my friend Larry Smith, who's the president and CEO of Fathers and Families Center. So this podcast, we want this to be encouraging. We want this to be something that is topical, entertaining, and just to be a companion for the hardest job out there, which is being a dad. Larry, thank you for the idea and for helping bring this to life. Let's remind people of the website address for Fathers and Families.
So it's www.fathersandfamiliescenter, all one word, fathersandfamiliescenter.org.
This podcast, Daddy Issues, will be available wherever you get your podcasts and on social media. And I hope to make it also available on that website, Fathers and Families. This is Daddy Issues. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.